After 32 years in prison, innocent man suing for malicious prosecution. Now, I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. Go pay a retainer fee to an attorney, $500 to $1,000 to get legal advice. I don't give legal advice. I give common sense, and hopefully you guys are getting it. The problem with malicious prosecution is you have to get railroaded before you can do anything. For example, best case scenario, you're charged with a DUI, you know you're not drunk, but the cop feels your eyes are too red and you smell like alcohol, coming maybe from his own breath. So you get taken to jail, car gets impounded, and they don't give you a breathalyzer and they don't take your blood. So you ask for a breathalyzer and they give you the breathalyzer at the end and you blow 000. Well, they say the breathalyzer might be not working correctly, so they just take you in anyways and put you in the cell. You go to trial because the DA says, well, I don't want to get sued for false arrest, false imprisonment, so let's just go all the way and see if we can get him down to a plea bargain. That way there's no liability issues here. So you go to trial and you say, nope, I want to go all the way. You get a jury trial. They find you not guilty. You're innocent because there's no evidence except for the 000 breathalyzer that you have as evidence there. Now you can turn around and sue for malicious prosecution because obviously you weren't under the influence and yet they still proceeded as if you were. That's best case scenario, which should take about a month or two. Now, well, actually about 2 months. Now, worst case scenario, you're found guilty and do 32 years in prison. Then and only then, when you get out, thanks to DNA samples, not because your time was up, because you were supposed to do life, but then and only then can you come out and sue for malicious prosecution, which is scary, folks. And the sad part is, the government, the cops, anybody helping them will commit the crime, and when you turn around and sue them because they did so under false pretenses, the taxpayers pay it. That's why this is never going to change, and it's going to remain the same, because the taxpayers are the ones that are paying for the price of corruption. Now, malicious prosecution is happening every day in every city, in every state. It happens every day. And what happens for them not to get sued, of course, is people end up doing plea bargains. So they'll give you a super good deal. Instead of getting a misdemeanor, you just got to pay $100. Oh, of course, thank you, master. And then they pay. Now, they can't go back and sue because they're admitting that they're guilty of something. Now, they make it seem like that's not the case, but that is the case. It makes it seem like they did you the favor on paper and reduced it to save time, when in fact, it wasn't that. It was that you were innocent, only you were just too scared and too much of a coward to do anything about it. It's really what it comes down to. Now, the story goes on to say, an Illinois man who was freed last year after 3 decades in prison for a crime he did not commit is now suing authorities who he claims failed to act on DNA evidence proving his innocence. Andre Davis has filed suit against police and the medical center in Raultville, Illinois, south of Chicago, for fabricating evidence to wrongfully convict him, then ignoring a DNA sample taken from the crime scene that, if examined, would have exonerated Davis years before his release. So it could have exonerated him, but of course they just ignored it. They said, oh, well, we didn't know it was there. He was first convicted in the 1980 kidnapping, rape, and murder of 3-year-old Brianna Stickle. Davis, then 19. Now I'm going to stop there. If you're a mom or a dad or a grandparent, keep this in mind. A lot of police officers in their late 20s, early 30s, mid 40s go for young children that do not know that there is so much corruption in the world, let alone in the police department, because of course of these commercials and the news always shows how good cops can be with toys for tots and all this garbage, when in fact they won't show the corruption that really goes on. So these young kids don't understand that when a cop comes up to them, they need to beware, because it's like a criminal with the badge, waiting to entice them into a cell. So you need to warn your kids, folks, because this is how it works. It says 19 had spent the day drinking at a house with at least 2 occupants, who at one point departed, leaving Davis alone with Stickle. Davis was arrested shortly after the girl was found dead, and while DNA testing was not possible at the time, blood and semen were both recovered from the scene. The new suit claims that detectives built their case based on the testimony of Donald DeRoe, who found Stickle's body in her brother's home and was later arrested. According to the complaint, it goes on to assert the investigation's flawed beginning and execution prevented police from identifying the real killer. Despite, now here's the crazy part, despite evidence implicating Brianna's next-door neighbor, Maurice Tucker, the defendant police officers failed to pursue Tucker at the time of the crime, and instead coerced, manipulated, and fabricated evidence to create a false case against Davis, the suit states. Now, it makes you wonder, Mr. Maurice Tucker, if he was related maybe to a cop or related to somebody that was connected. And so they looked at the next person who was the patsy of Mr. Davis. Sad to say, but that's how usually it works as well. I've seen it. So, it says, other than a medical report that was fabricated by the defendant emergency room doctor during his examination of Davis, I'm going to stop there. So now you have the prosecutor, the cops, and the hospital in collusion against this guy. And it doesn't sound, or at least it seems as if it's not the first time this doctor has done it, because logic will dictate that if you're a doctor and a police officer comes to you and says, can you make up a police report, examination, right? So he's going to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to falsify this examination in any way, shape, or form, because I'm not going to jeopardize my career for your stupid case. This is just one little bogus case. No, of course not. He didn't say that. He did it. Which makes you wonder how many times this doctor has done this to many innocent people. Now, will there be any criminal charges against the doctor, the cops, or the prosecutor? Of course not. Now that's the problem, folks. And I'll explain why in a minute. Okay, so once again, other than a medical report that was fabricated by the defendant emergency room doctor during his examination of Davis, there was no hard evidence, no fingerprints, serology, DNA, or other physical evidence of any kind linking Davis to the Brianna Stickle murder. However, the force of the defendant's misconduct was enough to secure a conviction in 2 separate trials. And it hasn't changed, folks. Back then, it was the way the jury perceived you. Now, it's the way the public perceived you, or perceives you. Because in reality, now, you're guilty through the media, which is sad but true. It says Davis was sentenced to 80 years in prison without the possibility of parole, although, even though they misspelled that, prosecutors pushed for execution, which makes you wonder how many people that were executed had been innocent, and they did it to clean up loose ends, as they say. So I'm not going to read more. It really pisses me off. But as I was going to say a minute ago, they're not going to be prosecuted because a prosecutor needs cops, crooked cops, to get clientele for the city or county. So if he prosecutes one cop for a crime, that's one less cop bringing him more clients. See how that works? So of course they're not going to do that, which is disgusting. People should be outraged, but they're not, because it didn't happen to them. And when it does, nobody will give a crap about you because it isn't happening to them. And that's how it works. We've been divided and conquered. Let me know what you guys would do if this ever happened. Thanks for watching.